Because
And I'm going to give you an opportunity to first of all ask questions. And if it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, I'll bring up a subject. But where are you at? You know, you've got a priest here. You've got an informal environment. What are some of the things that either you want to learn about in order to get closer to God, or some of the things that maybe are confusing you and causing you to do something that's wrong? Judge.
Father, you were mentioning something earlier on the topic of spiritual wounds, and how we need to be on the priesthood side here in the diaspora. You were talking about how we need to be doing a better job on informing the common lay people on how to heal their spiritual wounds.
Well, first of all, you have to identify them. And that comes from having regular confession. There's a lot of new people here. So you who have heard this story from me, you know, be patient. This was told to me by a very spiritual bishop. He's with the Lord now. Bishop Carellas does Samaras. And there were these two women who were very good friends. And they decided to go to this old ascetic who was up on a hill that everybody talked about, that he could, you know, read your thoughts and everything else. They decided to go to him for compassion. So the first woman went in, and she was really aware of her sins. And she wept so much that the ground, it was ground, of course, underneath, it became mud. And she was pouring out tears. And the spiritual father listened to her and then said, "My child," he said, "God will forgive you, but I need you to do one thing." "What is that?" "Yeah, I don't know. You know the stream about a half a mile from here? I want you to go down to the stream, find the largest stone that you can bring back up to me. Can you do that?" He said, "Of course." So she's on the way down, and the other one comes in and says, "You know, you don't know. I know I'm a sinner. I mean, everybody commits sins. But, you know, I don't remember a lot of them, and most of them, you know, people all do. You know, I've never done anything really bad. I haven't committed adultery or murdered anybody or anything like that." And so he listens to her, and of course there's not one tear shed in all of this. And he says, "Child, for you to be forgiven by God, you need to do something for me." "What is it?" "Yeah, I don't know. I want you to go down to the stream and get as many in your apron here, as many small stones as you can, and bring them back." So on the way down, the other one's coming back, and she's sweating. She has this huge boulder, and she puts it in front of the elder. And all he says is, "Child, do you know where you got that stone?" So of course, he don't know. "I know where it is." He says, "Put it back, go home. You know your sin. God has forgiven you." Well, the other one is really excited. She's going around picking up all these little colored stones from all over the place. And then she comes up with her apron, and she puts them in front of the elder and says, "I did what you said, elder. Now can I go home forgiven?" He says, "Well, there's only one other thing you need to do." He says, "Go back and put each little stone where you found it."
Oh.
And he says, "Yeah, no, I can't do that. I can't remember where each one went." And she said, "So it is with your sins, honey. You can't remember them, so you are not forgiven." And the more you don't confess, the easier it is to forget. Remember what I told you in one of the talks, I think it was yesterday's, last night talk, the three mothers, if you remember. What are the three mothers of all the passions? No. Forgetfulness.
Ignorance and laziness.
That's it. Forgetfulness, ignorance, laziness. If you kill the mothers by keeping them under pride, all that other stuff can't come into a being, because they're the children of these three. That's what the fathers say. The mothers of all the passions are forgetfulness, laziness, and ignorance. So that's where the battle needs to be done. And it's very important that you have a spiritual father, first of all. I don't know what the percentage is, but I would venture to say 75% of the Orthodox Christians don't have a spiritual father. Even though they go to confession, but they just go to confess their sins and that's it. He's not the person that's going to stand up for them on the day of judgment, or the person to whom they will show some form of obedience. Okay, there is a real, it's interesting. I have to share with you. I'm finally beginning to see the significance of the bond between the spiritual child and the spiritual father. It's really not something that I can describe in words, but I know that when people tell me, I know you were praying for me. I may not have been praying for them at that time, but through the bond of the priesthood, God let them see a bond there between my spiritual child and myself. And it's a special bond. And I know on the day of judgment, I have to stand up for them. We don't talk about spiritual fatherhood because, unfortunately, today, too, in most of the Greek parishes, at least, priests don't hang around. Maybe it's a miracle if they stay for more than 10 years. And so you get a different person with a different perspective. It's important for you to find a spiritual father that you feel God wants you to be that. He wants you to have that spiritual father. And the spiritual father, on the other hand, feels that he's being called to be your spiritual father. I think if more of I'm going with the Greeks again. I would venture to say that at least 50% of the Greeks never go to confession. Or they might go once a year. And yet, a lot more than 50% that attend church are in communion on Sunday. And that's an area of concern for me because we have to be aware of the wounds we have. And it's through confession that God reveals those wounds more deeply. And then he gives the spiritual father the guidance he needs to help the person heal the wound. How many of you here read The Way of the Pilgrim? Well, the ones who haven't read it, read it. And the ones who have read it, read it again. I've read it about 7 times, and every time I read it, I find something different. And there's 2 things in it that would be, if somebody didn't find it in a Mount Athos monastery hidden away in a room somewhere, some manuscript originally in Russian. There's 2 things in the second part. A confession that leads the inward man to humility. And those of you who are on my list, you know well about that one because I sent it out during the Great Fast in pieces. And the other one was the secret of salvation through unceasing prayer. A lot of very basic things that we need to know. But what I want to tell you about is what a spiritual father told a man who had a drinking problem. He told him that whenever he got the urge to drink, he was to pick up the gospel and read one gospel in its entirety. Now that's going to take several minutes to read. And after a while, he was cured. But in thanksgiving to God, he continued that practice. Every single day, he read one book of the 4 Gospels. And when he was too tired, he would pick the Gospel of Mark because it's the shortest. But at least he did it. He read it. The evangelicals and all, they talk about reading the Bible. Too many Orthodox don't know what's in the Bible because they don't read it. That same bishop, Carellas, God rest his soul. What a beautiful man.
Is this Callistus where?
No.
A different one?
He's still alive.
He's still alive. Anyway, he told me many years ago, read one chapter from the New Testament consecutively. It takes 9 months and 3 weeks and a day, I think, to do that. And he said, when you get to the chapter 22 of Revelation, then go back to chapter 1 of Matthew. Keep doing this until you depart this life. Well, unfortunately, until recently, I didn't take his advice. And thank God I'm in it now. But a young man, when he was 14, took the advice I gave him, and at 18, he told me he was in his 5th time. Now, you think about it for a minute. Young lady here taking notes. I forgot your name. Nicole. I'm going to ask you a very personal question. How old are you? 22. Let's say God let you live till you were 92. If you start today and read one chapter of the New Testament every day until you depart this life, you'll have read it 125 times. The entire New Testament. Not just the Gospels, everything. Now, maybe you won't understand what you're reading, but those words are not for understanding, they're for experiencing. And if you keep reading God's word, they're going to impact on your soul. They're going to do at least 2 wonderful things. They're going to expose the wounds. And they're going to help you find the healing. So it's very important. And then he said, if you want to, I did this, I think, twice. No, I didn't finish it the second time. He said, you can add one chapter of the Old Testament with the one in New. He said, but the most important thing is the New. It takes you 4.5 years to go through the Old Testament once, with the Orthodox version of the Old Testament. I always get stuck in Leviticus. All these tribes, blah, blah, blah. But there's something spiritual in there, but I just don't see it yet, It just shows, how much I've got to go in terms of growth. But the Word of God has to be at the cornerstone of my reading. All right? Now, what I'm doing now is to try to tell you the things that will help you get those wounds open or exposed to you and have you the desire to get the healing. Another thing that's very important is the writings of the church fathers. There's a lot of tremendous material out there today. Tremendous. Some of the older fathers, the St. Vladimir's Press has a series they started several years ago. Someone asked me about learning more about the Mother of God. They have a small book that has about 10 sermons on just the Dormition of the Mother of God from some of the greatest fathers in the church, like St. Andrew of Crete, St. John of Damascus, people like that. These are, and then you got things like the writings of St. Paisios, the Athonite, a modern father, one who fell asleep only 20 years ago at the most. St. Porphyrios, another modern father. St. Iapovos, recently glorified. We've got all these phenomenal writings. A word of caution. There's a lot of wonderful people who are converting to the Orthodox faith, but they yet to have established what is called in Greek the phronema of the Orthodox faith. There's no word in English that really can give you a clear picture of the word phronema. The only word that is kind of close is mindset. In other words, my orthodoxy has to be reflected in the way I turn on a light switch, in the way I look at you, in the way I do my cross. Every aspect of my life needs to reflect the mindset of the Orthodox faith, the way I do my work, everything. So, to get the mindset of the Orthodox faith, you have to live in it for a while and fall and rise within it a while. And a lot of these converts, God bless them, they want to write books. And so they write books, but without the phronima. And those books, to me, are more dangerous in a way than the heretical books, because they give a very colloquial look to the Orthodox faith. A pally look, my pal, my buddy. And they use colloquial language to describe things that can't be put into words. So be very careful. I would stay away from anything that's not a translation of a father or some holy person like St. Paisios, because there's a lot of that out there today. There's a lot of phenomenal books. Let me just give you one right now. If you don't have it, you need it. And why he hasn't been officially glorified is beyond me, because St. Paisios and St. Porphyrios are, in my opinion, they're saints because of him. My elder's spiritual father, the elder Joseph. Yes, Monastic Wisdom. Get that book, because it's letters that he wrote to spiritual children. He was not even a priest. He was simply a monk. But you're going to find in every one of those letters yourself. You're going to, oh my gosh, he wrote that to me. And they're short. They're never more than about 3 pages long. And in that book, you see another concept of orthodoxy that even Orthodox don't understand. He had spiritual children, but he couldn't read the prayer of forgiveness. He's not a priest. They wrote him letters. He writes them back, and then he tells them, go to the priest, have them put the stole over your head, and read the prayer. Perfectly Orthodox. Today, a little more modern, a spiritual child can write a letter to the spiritual father, or email it if they have, ways to email where no one can see it. I don't know if that exists or not. And then the spiritual father, I learned something from a very holy spiritual father in Greece. I was visiting one day in Thessaloniki, and he was such a spiritual father, he had to give out numbers. I mean, there were thousands that would come. Like you're number one at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, or whatever. But what he would do in reading the letters that he got from the people, he went into the altar, put on his stole, and then read the letter in the altar. And I thought, that's what I need to do. And that's what I do now. As soon as I get a letter, whenever I can, I get into an altar, put on my stole, and I read it there. And for me, this is so good, because I can write in the margin things I want to tell to the spiritual child, because I don't have that gift of discernment. So that helps me. And then when we talk, and then after we talk, I say, go to your parish priest. Have him read the prayer, and it's done. Because God knows no time or space. We're not bounded by that. Unfortunately, some of the priests, the child will tell me, my priest won't read the prayer. So I call the elder, or you got a Paisios here at St. Anthony's. I says, what do I do in that case? He says, in that case, you go into the altar and you read the prayer. Thankfully, I only have to do that for about 10% of my spiritual children. All the others they just go to the parish priest. They don't confess. They simply read the prayer. And I do that for some other spiritual fathers. They say, I'll get a call saying, Father such and such is my spiritual father. He asked if I could come on a day and read the prayer. And I don't ask them any questions. I just put my stole on them and read the prayer. See, this is part of the interconnectivity of the Orthodox faith that I don't think we're sharing too much. In the Greek Archdiocese, you who are in the Greek Archdiocese, how often do you hear sermons on confession? What about yes?
Once a year. I have a question about confession.
Okay.
Haven't been to confession that often. But that's because, not because I'm not a sinner, but I don't know what to say. I do crimes, I don't, intentional harm people. gossip here and gossip there,
Okay.
and that sort of thing. But it's like, I don't know what to say.
All right, what you need is some guidance. There is a very beautiful, very small book written by an abbot named Seraphim of Serbia, The Forgotten Medicine. Get that book and read it, and it's going to open up some windows for you to see more clearly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a purple book. It's look, it's that thick. It's really thin. And actually, there's a companion book that's
Strife and Reconciliation.
yeah, Strife and Reconciliation, which is also really good. Very simple, very profound. Now, in addition to that, there are some excellent guidelines to confession. Your spiritual father should have those available. I usually send, when I get a new spiritual child, I send out 2 versions and tell them to look at and find out which one works the best for them and use it. It asks you questions, a whole bunch of questions about a lot of things. And so that helps you. The other thing, though, that you need to do, how many of you here have had a life confession?
Life confession.
A life confession. Okay, so it looks like about half of you have had a life confession. Okay, a life confession is like a spiritual physical to the nth degree. What you do, it should take you at least a month to get it together. You go back as far as you can remember. When I was 5 years old, I stole a pack of gum, something like that. You don't have to organize it in any kind of order. But then you bring it to your spiritual father and you have that life confession. And what happens is that a lot of times in things that seem insignificant becomes the root of a very big sin. All right? And so it's like the dandelion. If you come and confess and we don't know the root, we cut off the green, but then it comes right back because the root is still there. I can give you a real clear illustration. One of my parishioners, when I was first in the greater Pittsburgh area, the elder Ephraim came for the first time there. And she went to confession, and the first thing that shocked her to no end, he looked at her and said, "Come in, Anastasia, have a seat." He'd never seen her before, but he could see what her name was because God has given him the grace to see into the heart. So she made her confession. I remember that, when Ann would come to me, because you wouldn't usually by Ann, she always had an anger problem. And I was trying to find the root of it. I couldn't find it. Well, Yelena saw it right away. Right after she finished confession, he says, "Child, could you wait just a minute? I'd like to share something with you." And he looked at her so endearingly and so lovingly and said, "You must let go of the anger you have for your mother when you were 9 because she had to work because your dad got injured, and in order for you all to have food, she had to work. She became like a latchkey kid, okay? Yeah. And she buried that anger when she was 9. She didn't know what to do with it, but then it came out later. And as soon as I confessed, she said, "Father, not even my husband knew about this." But she became mellow because we found the root of her anger. Some person may have a problem stealing things. Well, maybe stealing that pack of gum at the age 5 is what started it all.
But I have a question about that. So when you have confession, you're also getting, the priest, when he reads the prayers over you, he reads the prayers that the sins that you've not even mentioned also get forgiven.
No. Yeah, well, no.
Okay.
If that sin is still there, all right, it's still there. If you purposely forget, if you know it and you don't say it, your whole confession is gone.
But if you don't know it.
Well, if you keep coming to confession, it's going to come out eventually.
It's like poison.
It's going to come out eventually, but it needs to come out sometime, okay? And when God thinks the time is right, he'll help you bring it out. All right? But you are covered for that. That prayer covers you. Ignorance, forgetfulness, whatever it may be, may God forgive you, the priest says. Not like the Russian, they adopted it from, again, in the Russian church, they had a strong influence from the West. And it said, may God forgive you, and then they add, and I, your unworthy priest, forgives you. You know, and it's, you don't have to add anything. You just say, may God forgive you. You know, we say, God forgive us, and if you have confessed humbly, you will be forgiven. The prayer is not something magic, though, that's going to forgive you. Just like that particular Yetterner, he wouldn't even read the prayer over that other woman because she didn't know where her sins were. I had to do that once in my service to God, where this woman came and said, I don't have anything to confess because I haven't done anything wrong. And I said, well, I can't really read the prayer over you since you've done nothing wrong. Yeah. So I told her, I said, you're free to go.
You're free to go.
Yeah.
So those love and care to Greeks, I spent 15 years in Russian Orthodox Church. As you probably know, we can't take Holy Communion unless you had a confession. So what happened to Greeks?
Well, let's first of all straighten out what happened in Russia. Okay? Russia in the 18th century set up this rule. Because at the time, people were only going to communion twice a year. You must go to confession before you receive communion. But that was because they only went twice a year. Unfortunately, that became the rule of thumb. And now, whenever they receive communion, they have to go to confession. But what kind of confession? A lot of times it's during the service, the priest listens and then puts the stole on, and where's the confession? In other words, where's the interaction with the priest? What do I do to heal myself? What do I need?
We take usually the night before.
Yeah, most Russian priests will
On Saturday.
tell the church, like, come to vigil on Saturdays. That's where you have confession.
Yeah.
Usually,
Always.
usually the
Okay,
more,
how much time do you get with him, usually?
if you go
She
early,
gets an hour because I stay right behind her.
yeah,
She gets an hour.
Well, that's good, but I mean, I can give you examples where it's been done during the liturgy and no more than a minute.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Holy Virgin Cathedral has the same thing in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Usually it's about 5 minutes per person, and then they very quick, and then you go.
But it
Yeah.
depends on
It's
people.
so fresh.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, the whole concept, the purpose of confession is interaction with your spiritual father. And I'm sorry, in 5 minutes you can't get it. It's just, he needs to be able to, how would you like to go to a physical doctor and just spend 5 minutes with them?
That has not
That's
been my
about the way they are nowadays.
Yeah,
He's never with me for 5 minutes. He's always until
Yeah.
I can see. He stays
Yeah.
and he prays and asks him a question.
okay, that's good. But I'm saying the general rule
Yeah, but-
that most people follow in the Slavic tradition,
Yeah, it's quick. In Russia, it's like
yeah.
2 minutes. And then when you start out of topic asking questions, you say like, what is your sin? So they don't want really to talk to you. So because you have to talk, it's not a dialogue.
Yeah.
So you just confess.
See, that's the key. It's not a dialogue. And confession needs to be a dialogue. But the problem in the Greek churches, let me show you, all right? I've got a clear example because I have a brother younger than me, has a wonderful big church with, I mean, high tech to no end. It's got everything. It's got those little black things that you put on a red light and it turns green to get into the church. You know, there's no keys.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know what you call that thing.
Just a keyless entry.
No, it's just there's a red light and I put this little disc in front of it, you know, and it opens.
Oh, RFID chip.
Okay. Anyway, I hope it's not doing anything to me, but anyway, he's got like 330 family units. Let's give a low estimate to how many that would be. Let's just say that only includes 3 people in each family unit. That comes up to, let's say 1,000 people rounded off. Now, if everybody in that church went to confession just once a month, that's 1,000 confessions a month. All right? I'm usually in that church a minimum of once a week and sometimes 3 times a week hearing confessions. In the 3 years I've been there, I've only seen him hear confessions twice. So what I'm saying is, and the communion line is always 200 people or more. A lot of people are not confessing their sins, and they're going to communion. And that, I'm really concerned about that a lot. Yes?
So this goes back, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of this is the fault of the church. When I was raised back east, all these little Catholic kids were telling about confession. I'd say, confession? You guys go to confession, that's interesting. We don't have confession.
I felt the same way you did.
Okay, and communion, we took communion maybe 3 times a year on special occasions.
Right.
There's no communion every week. What do you
Yeah.
think? I going up there every week? What's he, crazy or something?
Yeah.
Maybe four people went to communion on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Not the whole congregation.
Right.
That's the way we were raised, but for 15,
Yeah.
20 years I was raised that way.
Yeah, I was the
Why?
same way. The priest that I grew up when, up till about the age 10, he didn't believe that he should hear confessions. So I thought confession was Catholic. I didn't. I found out what confession was when the second priest came. We got kicked out of the altar, and he wouldn't let us in until we confessed. And he'd kick us out at a time. I mean, that was back when the sermons were done what was supposed to be done after the gospel. And while he was giving the sermon, we were having a ball. We were throwing, the bread in the mouth. I mean, I'm really showing my sins now. And so when he comes back at the altar, we get around the altar table like a bunch of little cherubs. I can still see Father Dan's face, God rest his soul. He didn't look to either side. He said, I want all of you boys to take off your robes immediately and leave the church at once. This is just before the great entrance. It was a major feast day. The church was jammed. And here comes all these altar boys. As the priest is bringing the gifts out, we're going out of the church. So that's where I learned about confession. But let me tell you something that's even more sad. When I was at the seminary, I didn't get one class on confession. And I talked to someone who went to the seminary 30 years later, and he said he too did not have one class on confession.
Really?
I'm serious. I'm serious.
They just leave it up to experience, or?
I don't know, but it's a very sad thing because thank God for the elder Ephraim, because I learned more about confession from him just by seeing him and looking at him. It was kind of like an oxymoron, joyful sadness. Joyful because I saw a holy man, sad because I saw how filthy I was. Yeah.
May I change the subject?
Yes, you may. This is free here, and you can change it back, so no problem.
Father?
Wait a minute.
How do we overcome forgetfulness?
Okay.
I haven't figured that one out. I'm very forgetful.
All right. Well, first of all, every day you ask the Mother of God in Christ to help you not forget. That has to be paramount. If that's laziness or whatever one of those three is a big problem for you, every day ask for help. Every day. And then I tell you what, I've got a certain thing that I do every day at noon. It's a certain prayer that I read against abortion. And sometimes I'm busy, but my phone tells me. It gives me a warning 30 minutes and 5 minutes. And I make use of that. I make use of the electronic media to help me remember things sometimes.
I have tons of lists. I calendar even to make a phone call. It's everything else in between. I don't know if I've got so much on my plate, so much on my mind that even like some important things I'll forget. It's just a general problem for me. I do reminder, trust me.
Yeah.
Upon list upon list. Reminder.
Well, then what we need to do, and in your case, we need to force you to read a certain canon every day for like 40 days to get you into a routine. In other words, you need some extra medication, spiritual medication, and it'd be hardcore stuff to get you going. But again, that's what the church does not give penances to punish. The church gives penances to either bring something out like forgiveness out, forgetfulness out to where you can deal with it and overcome it, or to heal the wound that's in a soul caused by a major sin. Let me give you an example. Let's say someone commits adultery. Now that's a major sin. Depending on the canon you look at, it's anywhere from 1 to 3 years no communion. 1 to 3 years no communion. Now, here's where the priest, with God's grace, has to look at the person and see where they are spiritually. Whether to give it a 3-year or a 2-year or 1 year, or even make it less than a year. But then he's responsible on the day of judgment when he makes it lower. But the purpose is not only you don't receive communion, but then the priest doesn't forget you. He contacts you frequently and says, he also gives you things to read, prayers to say. And if he does all these things, when he's finally ready to receive communion, it's going to be a wonderful encounter for him. I had a young woman that it happened to her. She committed a major sin. And, she looked at me in pain. She said, 1 year? I said, 1 year. And then I told her these other things I wanted to do. And I only wish I could have been the priest to give her that communion on that year. Because she was in such joy. She said, Papa, I was radiating. And she said, and I said, you know why? Because you were obedient. You practiced obedience. So, in your case, you need to read a canon every single day. And, the priest said, get your spiritual father to be on your case to check with you that you read it every day. And that routine will help you, overcome that forgetfulness.
Do some spiritual fathers not pick a spiritual child? How do you pick your spiritual children?
Well, I learned from my spiritual father. People would ask me to be their spiritual father, and I really wasn't sure about that. I'd been a parish priest. I'll have to say this. There's a woman in Pasadena, California, that's the culprit that kind of started it all with me. I was in Knoxville, Tennessee. Someone told her to contact me, and I said, look, I'm 2,000 miles away from you. I don't know what I can do to help you. She called me like 2 or 3 times a week for 2 years. And finally, I agreed to be her spiritual father. I hadn't even seen her yet. But, she just kept persisting. And then other people asked, and I asked my spiritual father, I said, what do I do? This is all he said. They ask you, you didn't ask them. And then I got the message, I needed to pray. And I would pray, and then I would tell the person, either I think I'm right for you, or I don't think I'm right for you. And a couple of times when I said, I don't think I'm right, the person got really sad. And I prayed again, and I said, okay. Because I don't want to see anybody hurt, but at the same time, you want the person to be matched to the proper spiritual father. It's very important. Yes, Nicole?
Going off of that, how do you know if it's a good match? On the one hand, some people, different priests will tell you different things, and some will be more strict and some won't. So how do you determine?
Okay, first of all, a good thing, St. Simeon, the new theologian, has a beautiful prayer that's short. A prayer to find a spiritual father. And when people are looking, I'll send them that prayer and tell them to say it at least once a day. And if you're lucky enough, like you are in these major metropolis areas where there's several churches, talk to people who have spiritual fathers, all right? Find out what they say about their spiritual father. And then go to that person's church. I think the main thing about that you need to look at as a spiritual father, first thing is that he has a spiritual father. That he confesses as well. Because if he's not confessing, then it's not a good idea for him to be your spiritual father. The second thing is make sure to the best of your ability that he's grounded in the fathers of the church. So that what he gives you is from the church fathers, not from himself so much. He gives you what's already there to be given to you. But I guarantee you, if you really in your heart are looking for a spiritual father, with your heart, I guarantee you God's going to lead you to the one he's chosen for you, if you don't have one. And you shouldn't change spiritual fathers unless there's a real major reason for it. Because too many of them are shopping around, you know. It's a good one. In a grocery store, it's got a lot of different brands, you know. You can shop. But it's better to stick with a spiritual father. So, yeah. Yes, Doc.
The scripture says that, you know, if you lust in your heart, it says if you committed adultery in your heart.
Yeah.
And, you know, with the internet, sometimes you just get into this weird situation. I don't know, maybe I try to get out of that situation, try to get out of the whatever site I'm on.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's accidental and you want to get out of that. When you lust in your heart, as opposed to, adultery, you know, what do you talk about with your spiritual children?
Well, the main thing, Doc, is you have to see the degree of the sin. Now, I'm glad you brought up that sin. Many of the monks on Mount Athos that people have told me, the holy ones are telling people today that demon is sending more people to hell than even the demon of pride. More people are going to be going to hell if they don't confess, of course. Look at the United States. What's considered normal today?
Promiscuity.
Yes. Promiscuity is normal. If you're a virgin, you're weird.
It's been that way since I was a kid.
Well, it's certainly not that way when I was a kid.
It's excelling.
And when I was a kid, there was a very small amount of people who, had physical relations. Most people were still virgin. So.
Now it's accelerating with the internet.
Yeah, and all right. Then you have to look at what can I do? What do I need to do to diminish the effect of the demon of lust? All right. The first thing we need to do is stop feeding it. One of the worst things right now is pornography. I was telling Doc and a few other people, the non-religious group, the Society of American Pediatrics and Pediatric Surgeons, about 5 years ago, came out with a statement: do not allow a computer to be in a bedroom, because if it's in the bedroom, that child will watch porn. So put a computer in the general room in the living room where everybody is available and can see, what's going on. So pornography is really, it's like you said, I've got a block, and it does a real good job. It's called an ad block. My sides are white, no matter what place I go. Now, if in reading an article, then there's articles within that article. It could have stuff in it if I clicked on it, but you can't see. It's not enticing in that respect. I can't tell you how many emails I get garbage every day, and they go right into my junk, and I go right in and hit, select all, delete. You just stay away from that like the plague, because it's a terrible thing. Pornography, filthy language. That's another thing that feeds that demon. And today, the F word and the S word are unfortunately very prevalent even in middle school, and I heard even in grammar school. I hope that's not true, but I know it's true in middle school. Movies and television. Most of the programs today have, at best, innuendo about sexuality. And at worst, just downright, obvious stuff. I remember one time I was at my older daughter's house. We were watching this big football game on this big screen, and it was like 7 p.m. And this little short came from one of these sitcoms. I thought they should have rated that short R. 7 o'clock at night, little kids are seeing this. And that was just advertising. That wasn't the sitcom itself, okay? And then this is one that's going to surprise you. Judging other people. The church fathers say, when we judge other people, God permits the demon of lust to attack us. So if you've been attacked recently by the demon of lust and you're judging people, there's one of the reasons right there.
To add to that, Mother Marcella told me, she said, the church fathers say you're either put in hot water, meaning that you get the temptations to judge people and or think negatively about them, ill will. And when you give in to those temptations, then the demons put you in fire. So the hot water leads to fire, which is basically the other sins like lust. And,
yeah. So these are the things you want to avoid. But then there's one beautiful statement that the church fathers say about this demon. It comes in by the barrel and goes out through the pinhole. So,
What does that mean?
think about it. What does that mean? It comes in by the barrel, comes in easily, goes out through the pinhole. Hard to get out. So that's why the church says, keep it out. And listen to the example they give from the Old Testament. Joseph, the patriarch, when he was a young man, Potiphar's wife wanted him. And she grabbed him and pulled him close to her. Rather than fall into sin, he ran out of his garment naked. He ran away from it. And that's what the fathers say. You don't stay in battle with this. You leave, you run.
Well, what was the sin there? That was his wife.
No, that was his ruler's wife.
Oh, all right, I thought you said his
No. Potiphar's wife. His name wasn't Potiphar, his name was Joseph. Now, so what about, before I get your question, what can you do to shrink this demon? There's three major things. Prayer, fasting, prostrations. I tell young men, this is going to sound crazy. If there's anything good about the fornication demon of masturbation, it's that you're not going to do it in a room filled with people. Right? You're not going to go out on the street and do it.
San Francisco's a little different.
Well. All right. Thanks, John. So what I tell them, when you get the urge, immediately do one of two things. Either start doing prostrations until you're going to pass out, because prostrations take a lot of energy. And if you do 100 or 150 of them, you're not going to want to do anything after the 150 prostrations. All right? Or take a walk, or get where there's people. Get where there's people. It's very important that you make use of these things and shrink it. But here's the thing you also have to remember about this demon. And I think I can safely say this. There's not one person in this room that's going to conquer that demon. I'll give you a patristic illustration. There was this monk who had been praying for 15 years because the demon of fornication was really hitting him. And finally he reached a peaceful feeling in his heart. And he said, I've conquered it. And so he went to his spiritual father and he says, by the grace of God, all these 15 years, I've conquered the demon of lust. And he says, okay, son. He said, what if there was a beautiful naked woman right here? And he grabbed his pillow and started singing the Jesus praise. He said, stop. He said, you haven't conquered anything. Because if you'd conquered it, you wouldn't even know if that was a man or woman. So you're not going to conquer this demon, but with the grace of God, you can always keep it in check. Just like the alcoholic who doesn't drink, because he knows one drink is going to put him over. You can keep it in check. But do avoid the things that feed it to the best of your ability. And like Doc said, if you accidentally see something, immediately go away from it. You haven't sinned then. You didn't go for it. You weren't looking for it. It only becomes a sin if you stay there with it. Don't judge people, man. That's a big one there. Yes?
That's my question. I mean, I don't even know what to call them, but now every time I go out shopping or, you know, have something to do, I call them its or half and halves. I mean, and it's very hard for me not to judge them. I mean, how do I deal with a clerk that they're half man and half woman in appearance?
Yeah, okay, here's what we've got to do. Here's what we got to do, and I'm still working on it too, Agapi, but I'm going to tell you what an old monk of Mount Athos told me. And when I do what he said, it works every time. He said, don't look at the surface of the person. Remember this. Every human being, whether they believe in Jesus Christ or not, is a living icon of Christ. And then he pointed to an icon of Christ on the wall. He said, would you speak ill of that icon? And I said, well, of course not, Father. And he said, then work on this, son. This is a monk. He wasn't even a priest, but boy, did I learn a lot from him. I'm going to give you another story that he told me that's awesome as well. But that's the key. Every human being, no matter how they look, is a living icon of Jesus. And the more I can see that, the easier it'll be for me to say, oh my Lord, this society is hurting so many souls, they don't know who they are. Please help us out of this. And I'm not judging the person anymore, because I see them as a living icon. And I know, like you said, it's tough. But again, grace comes in if we consistently show that we really want that. We really want to look at every person as a living icon. But let me tell you another illustration he gave that was just as extremely powerful. He said there's a region in Greece. Now, maybe this was back when he was a younger man, so it might not be doing it that way today. But the way they got the fish, there was shallow water, they would take and knock rocks against rocks. And it would cause a certain sound in the ocean, in the water of the stream, and it would cause the fish, it would bust up their equilibrium. And they would come to the surface, and then they would have a net, going with the current, and then would just go right into the net. And then he gave the illustration. He said, that's today. He said, the children especially, but even adults, the sounds of the world are deadening their spiritual understanding. And they're just floating into the net of the devil. And I thought, wow, what a beautiful illustration. See, this is a thing. Thank God we've got the monastic presence, because they are always in prayer, and God gives them these very profound but very easy to understand examples for us to take out into the world and help ourselves. And some of the icons of Christ in his baptism, not too many, but I've seen one like this in particular. It shows him in the water, and the fish are going with the current, except for one. The one that went up the other to get the blessing. He was under the hand of Christ, and he went against the current. And that's what we have to teach our children to do, to go against the flow, not with the flow. But for them to see an example, you and I have to go against the flow. Peter.
Okay, this is a very basic question. I've asked it at least 15 or 20 times. And I get answers, but then a week later, I say, what did he mean by that? It's about death.
Yeah.
When we die. So, supposedly you die and you've been judged, you go to heaven or hell. But there's a final judgment.
Yeah, that's the first judgment is called a partial judgment.
Okay, so do you go somewhere after the partial judgment?
Well, you're either going to be in a place. See, the church doesn't go into a lot of details on stuff like this, but here's what they do say. The soul is going to be in a state is going to be tasting torment, or it's going to be tasting joy.
Based on what?
Based on the way they lived.
That judgment is made by God?
Yes, it's made after, and this is an area that we can't go in. We don't have the time to go through the toll houses and things right now, but that's why it's important to confess your sins, because when you confess a sin, then it's taken out of your book of life. And even if the demon has the boldness to tell, as your soul is journeying, and to tell, the guardian angel, because you're going to have the guardian angel, and we don't know who the other angel is. It's called the meeting angel, when our soul separates from our body. And if you've been forgiven, he will simply say, "That's gone. That's gone. You can't use that sin against him." But here's the beauty of the church prayers. Let's say a person is in a state of torment. The church as a mother is going to constantly pray until God comes in the second time for everyone, even the ones that lived a terrible life. We don't know what God's going to do at the end, but there have been examples where this one priest, his mother had done some very bad things. And he kept praying for her because he saw her in a very bad place. She was in black and she was covered with mud, and she was crying out for help. And eventually, through more and more prayers, he did 40 liturgies for her in a row. And eventually she came to him and said, "Thanks be to the grace of God, I'm at peace now." So it's actually possible to take someone out of torment into joy before the second coming. And that's why always, as long as a person didn't leave the faith, I have a very close relative who left the faith, and I asked my spiritual father, "Can I remember them?" He said, "As long as they're still living, you can remember them. But if they were to die before going back, then I could no longer remember them in the liturgy. I can still pray for them in my personal prayers. But I could only pray in the liturgy for those who died that were still in the church, even if it was loosely."
Okay. We haven't taught the lessons of torment and joy. I never hear anyone telling me about that.
No, it's another subject like abortion that's not discussed.
It's a basic part of our faith.
Yes, it is. It's a very basic part of the faith.
What is it?
Well, that's where the mystery comes in, then, because it's like, so you die, and you don't go to heaven or hell, because the judgment hasn't been made yet.
You do see where you are going to end. See, here's another thing, Peter, and this is what's so hard for us to understand, because now reason's going to get very mad about what I'm about to say, because it's not reasonable. When we die, what are the things that confine us while we were in this life?
Sin, passion.
No. There's two things that confine us in this life.
Time.
Time is one of them.
Space.
Space is the other. When we depart this life, no time, no space. So right away, that confuses your reasoning ability, which means, God forbid, if I were to die tomorrow and God were to come 1,000 years later, to me it may not seem like a day, because there's no time or space after that. There's just God. Yes.
Yeah, I have two questions. They're to be shocking and sad that the church is not doing anything about either one of them, and that is abortion and ecumenism. Church is not doing anything about either one of them. Not, at least not my church. Certainly the church is not doing anything about it.
Yeah, that's a real good point. In terms of the one about ecumenism, my spiritual father is... Yeah, my spiritual father has really helped me out a lot on that. I was ready to go to the old calendar when I first met him because of ecumenism, all right? Well, ecumenism as it's defined today is to show love to the other Christian formations by praying with them, by doing things together in a liturgical stamp. In other words, we go vested to Protestant churches or Catholic churches. We don't take communion, but we participate in that respect. And we say things like, the church is two lungs, and one lung is the Orthodox Church and the other lung is the Catholic Church. Things like that. These are all not correct ways to think. And it's very much practiced today. But let me just tell you this about, and it really helped me a lot. This is not the time to get all upset about ecumenism. As long as your priest is not forbidden to do and say what is patristically correct, make sure you're with the priest that does that. Okay? In other words, they haven't shut our mouths yet. When that happens, God forbid, then we're going to have to do something in that area. But the thing about abortion, yes, we need to get much more involved in that. The Orthodox Church is at best terribly involved. At best. The groups of the Protestants and the Roman Catholics, there's a group called, how many of you have heard of it? 40 Days for Life.
Yeah.
It was started by 4 people in Dallas around a kitchen table. Why did it start? Because Planned Parenthood decided to put a huge facility right next to Texas A&M that at that time had 50,000 students. And so they decided, well, what can we do? We're going to go in front of their place and just pray for 40 days. We're not going to, if they come to us, a person comes to us, we'll talk to them, but we're not going to hold up signs of dead babies or anything like that. We're simply going to pray in front and say, we're going to talk about life. Well, in about a 6-month period, they saved 100 babies just by staying in front of that place. Well, apparently God had plans for this because in 4 other cities they were doing the same thing. This was in 2004. In 2007, they got together and they started to go out big. The first year, 35 cities got involved in the 40 Days for Life movement. And all you do, they set up a chart, can you be there from 3 to 4 or, on Tuesday or whatever. And people just go out there and they pray. And they have material. If someone wants to talk, they'll talk to them. It's now in 365 cities in the United States. Last one, they do 2 a year. One at the Great Fast and one around our Christmas fast, believe it or not. And it's closing clinics. They've closed 90 of them. Wow. And they brought 150 people out of the clinics who used to work with them who are now in 40 Days for Life. But my favorite story about this is they had such an effect on that clinic in Texas that it closed. They purchased it and it became the international headquarters for 40 Days for Life. So look what can be done. My daughter Juliana and her family went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago. And last year they convinced me to go with them. I've never seen anything like this in my life. The night before they had little exhibits of all the different pro-life groups. And I'm going to tell you this. When I walked in that room, I had to fight the tears. I felt such a presence of God in that room. And it really saddened me that not one of the exhibits was from an Orthodox group. But all these people in there were for the life. And what really made me greatly joyful, by the way, those of you who are over 55, there's an answer to AARP, which is a bunch of liberal wackos. Don't get an AARP. There's a group called AMAC, American Association of Mature American Citizens, solidly pro-life. They had a booth there. I was so pleased. The very first thing there was the AMAC booth. There is a group called Zoe for Life. It's an Orthodox group. It's out of Cleveland. I met with them and gave them a few talks. I'm hoping someday that Zoe for Life is going to be in every Orthodox parish of this country. Because they started out by just, giving clothing and stuff like that. Well, someone donated an ultrasound machine. So now they've got nurses and stuff to help. They're actually now starting to to be very active in Cleveland. It's just a few Orthodox people that got together. You are the lay people that can get things moving, okay? And the main thing you can do, though, is pray every day that God will deliver us from this terrible crime. The numbers are a little down now, but 1,000 babies are killed every day.
In America?
1,000 in the United States every single day. And some of them are in their third trimester. And it's disgusting, it's demonic, it's sick. And you're right, the church needs to be much more involved in that, but it's going to have to start from you. Because right now it doesn't seem like the hierarchy will get together once a year and write a statement. But we got to go further than that. We've got to get our hands dirty.
I have an idea. Church should put anathema on those doctors that are doing it, and the parents too.
Well, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. But the first thing we need to do is educate the people about the evils of abortion. They need to know what it is. And then we go from there, because it's not going to make any difference to them right now, because they don't understand things. In fact, it might cause them to sin more, because he might blaspheme against the excommunication, and that'll be worse for them. I'm with you in that understanding. I don't think, for one thing, this is what a priest should do this. If he knows that a doctor is doing abortions, or a nurse, or a psychiatrist is advising them, or a politician is doing it, he should not give them communion for their own benefit. Because when they take communion, they're taking it to their damnation. Every time they receive. So the best thing that we have to start with the priest. I had a situation when my second parish, first one by myself in Sioux City, Iowa. How many of you have heard the name Paul Sarbanes?
Yes.
Thank God he finally retired, so maybe now he can learn about how terrible it was. Well, he came way back when I was in Sioux City 35 years ago, or almost 40 years ago now, to support another pro-death guy. And I'm thinking, Lord, please don't let him come to the cup. I bless you, guys. Because if he comes to the cup, I can't in good conscience give him communion. Well, thank God he didn't come to the cup. But in the coffee afterwards, I gave him a book, What the Orthodox Church Says About Abortion. I said, you've got a Rhodes Scholar. I said, but you're very wrong in this issue. Please read this. Well, for the next 27 years, he voted 100% pro-death. He even voted to uphold Clinton's veto of partial birth abortion. You know what that is? See, nobody knows anything. What it is they pull the baby out breech, but they leave the head in. Then they take a scissors and open it out and suck out the brains. That's partial birth abortion. And Clinton said, I prayed before I vetoed the bill. I don't know who he prayed to, but it wasn't God. No, it does bother me that we've allowed politics just to kind of control things. That's why I say you guys in the grassroots have got your work done. There is never a reason for an abortion. Because if you've got cervical cancer, and in removing the cervical cancer, the baby's going to actually die. That's not an abortion. If you've got an ectopic pregnancy, that's not an abortion, right, Doc?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be considered an abortion.
Yeah, the baby's in the fallopian tubes. That's not a normal place, and there's no survival there. And so the baby usually dies in the fallopian tube, the tubal pregnancy. And so you need to do the emergency surgery to help the mom.
Yeah.
But you're not actively killing the baby.
But you know, mothers, I mean, I've seen examples, I'm sure you've seen more, Doc. Cancer, and the doctor says, you need to start chemotherapy, and they're pregnant, and they wait until they have their baby, and some of them died. But that's a true mother, because There's two innate characteristics in every woman that men don't understand. And that's why they sometimes say stupid things to their wives. Because they don't understand. These two innate characteristics are to nurture and protect their young. They're created that way by God. So when a woman has an abortion, she actually goes against her nature. And that's what's so sad. That's why we need to, I want to find every Orthodox woman who's had an abortion. I want to talk to them. I want to help them. The ones who still don't realize what they did is wrong, I want to help them find repentance. And the ones who do, I want them to realize that they are forgiven. That God has forgiven them. Yes.
There's a pregnancy center, we're from San Jose, St. Nicholas, and I started an outreach with Real Options Center. There's, I think, I don't know how many in the Bay Area, and they have a Rachel's Vineyard retreat, they call it, for anybody that's had a man or a woman that's been involved in an abortion, and it's a retreat they can go on. And a lot of the people are Catholic involved. I don't know a lot about their retreat, but they aim at healing. But you see, my husband tried to give a talk on abortion, and they've turned it down. So I started with, I got it blessed by the Father, an ad in the bulletin, what Real Options Pregnancy Center, it's 3 doors down on the Alameda in San Jose, and they help.
From Planned Parenthood?
From Planned Parenthood. They're 3 doors down. So any woman that comes in, they'll give them free counseling and provide services. So I started a chapter in the church. I explained it briefly in the bulletin. It ran for like 6 weeks, and now it's condensed. Of what we're collecting to help these families, moms in crises. So people, will bring any of the listed stuff. And so I feel like it's a first step that anybody can do.
Exactly.
You don't have to, spill guts out to everybody, but you can talk about compassion in women and families in crises with a pregnancy, and that they're getting support there. And so we're meeting their basic needs. And, most of society's open to that.
Yeah,
it's a way to get in the door.
She's right, Ruth. If everyone has one Ruth in their parish, then that can be done. But please pray, if it's God's will. I really believe that God has given me His blessing to create this abortion talk. But I gave it in November, and I've never had fewer people. It was only 14.
Father, if you preach or teach people that abortion is wrong, you don't provide services or help because they're going to be kicked out of their home, or their boyfriend or husband is going to throw them out. You really got to minister to them, and it's just part of the heart as opposed to the reasoning.
Yeah, but really, just the priests need to know. I have one metropolitan, the one in Colorado, who I think is willing to let me talk to his priest, because we've got to get it out to them. Michael wants me to give it again here. I might end up doing that because there was only 14 people there.
We only got 2 weeks' notice you were coming.
I got 0 notice.
So
I
we
did
didn't
not.
get
Well, you know what happened? That the approval kept getting delayed, and finally the approval came. And but God put that on my heart 43 years ago. Or 45 years ago now. I've stood in front of clinics. And I love the women. My heart goes out to them. But God forgive me. I'm very angry at the doctors because they know better. They know better. And I know that because of my anger there, I'm not allowing God's grace to come in. I have to remember that they're living icons of Christ too, even though they're killing living icons of Christ. I'm going to make a statement right now. If you know someone who's had an abortion that's Orthodox, please try to get them to see your priest. And if they feel that they can't go to someone they can see, would you please tell them to call me? Or give me their name so I can at least pray for them. Because
you don't understand.
when a woman goes against her nature, it's got to be hard. I'm going to end with this story about my little granddaughter, Eliusa. Thanks to, this is another thing, John, that gets me. Thanks to the fact, without my daughter's knowing, when she was like 9 months old, they shot her 6 times, 6 different doses in one shot. And she was already starting to talk at 9 months. And everybody was saying how brilliant she was going to be. Well, after those shots, we couldn't understand her. And who?
Shots.
Immunizations. 6 together at once. 6 to a 9-month-old. And so she had to go to occupational therapy, and she's getting a lot better. She's 8 now, but we got to homeschool her. She's got a brain of wisdom about her that scares me sometimes. But when she was 3, they had baby mommy dolls and baby dolls. And this little 3-year-old, no, I'm sorry, she was 2. She went and put a baby with each mommy and made this statement: babies need their mothers. A 2-year-old. So that shows you that innate nurture and protect was alive in a 2-year-old. But I want you to leave with a good spirit here. There are a lot of terrible things going on. There's no question about it. But before we can help other people, we've got to work on ourselves. You and I need to about 7 or 8 years ago, I believe the Mother of God added this prayer to my prayer rule. I said, please help me today to love thy Son in thee more than I did yesterday, and to be more open in my heart for the never-ending, limitless, and unconditional love that thou hast for me. Because that's the bottom line to everything. Loving God more and being more open to the love he has for us. Now, to be more open, that means I've got to work. I've got to do things that will open my heart. But the church has everything for me. The most important thing is worship, both in your home and at church. There's no reason why everybody in this room can't once a week do a small supplicatory canon and once a week do an agathist. No reason. Can you imagine what would happen to this country if every Orthodox Christian did a small supplicatory canon of the Mother of God once a week and an agathist once a week? Think of what that would do to this whole nation. But first of all, what it would do to you and me. Opening that heart to that love that God has for us. We can't even comprehend it. We don't even know the depth of that love. We can never know it. But the more we get to know it, the easier it will be never again to judge. Or to think bad about anyone. Because we know we're loved. And we want everyone to have that love. Not just 1 or 2. So you go back out into that world, having been in this wonderful monastery environment for 3 days, having worshiped together in such a wonderful, and being in the presence of an ordination to the priesthood.
Yes.
But you go there, you go back with an awareness of how much the Mother of God loves you. And I had to notice when I first brought up the icon of the Mother of God embracing child as an infant, all of you just went, oh. That's how she wants to be with each of us. She wants to caress each one of us the same way. John, I'm going to have you read this, and then I'll say, where is he?
Right here.
He's gone. Well, I'm not going to read the prayer then, because it's really more of a national prayer to the Mother of God. I mean, it's a nice prayer, but yes.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
I heard the pro-life thing. I heard a story of the March for Life in San Francisco this year.
Speak up, Peter, we can't hear you.
I heard a story about the March for Life in San Francisco this year. Okay. When the pro-life protesters were more the normal ones, or whatever, the run-of-the-mill ones, not the Protestants or whatever, were marching down the street, the pro-choice or pro-death people were just jeering at them, screaming obscenities and whatnot. The Orthodox came down and they started singing, chanting hymns, and all of a sudden everyone just kind of went quiet, I said, there's hope. I mean, these people they're not completely.
Most people are ignorant. They really don't know. If you put on a TV commercial what an abortion on a TV commercial at prime time, a lot of people would realize how ignorant they are. But
well, they get mad at you because you're showing something so good.
yeah, right. So anyway, let's just stand. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Forgive me, Lord Jesus, for not having the book I wanted to bring, and offer a prayer from the Compline service for these beloved children that belong to Thee. May I just humbly ask that You will keep them always hungering to love Thee more and Thy mother more, and to be more open to the love that Thou hast for them. May I also say, Most Holy Theotokos, guard, protect, and keep these children. Embrace them. Let the wounds of their souls be healed by that divine motherly love that You have for us all. Grant us a restful night and a wonderful liturgy tomorrow together, and grant safe journeys to all of them back to their homes. I thank Thee for the great joy and the great honor to be with these children. Amen. Amen. Christ is risen.
You mean me let Romanians in here?
Well, you can take it. It's more of a nationalistic prayer. It's not really. It's not a universal prayer for the Mother. It's for Russian. It's for Russian. It's for Russian.